Hi, everyone. Welcome to How PubMed Works, Automatic Term Mapping, or ATM. My name is Margo Malachowski, and I'm an Education and Outreach Coordinator for the network of the National Library of Medicine, or NNLM. In Region 7, my office is located at UMass Chan Medical School in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I am here with Rebecca Brown from the NNLM National Training Office. Rebecca is my production assistant today, and she will keep an eye on the chat to make sure I don't miss anything. Here is our agenda for today. I will start with some search tips from the National Library of Medicine about using the search box in PubMed. We will look in depth at search details. We will talk about how to search for phrases, which is one of my favorite topics. And we will talk about the order of ATM operations and how it can affect your search results. We will look at the 3 ATM tables. And lastly, I will show you how to bypass ATM when it is not doing what you want it to do. Before I get to the search tips, let's define automatic term mapping, also known as ATM. ATM is PubMed's behind-the-scenes process that kicks in automatically when you enter terms into the search box without any sort of qualifiers, such as tags or quotation marks. You don't have to do anything special to turn on ATM, which is great because ATM was developed to retrieve relevant results. So now let's look at some search tips from the National Library of Medicine. To take advantage of ATM, the National Library of Medicine recommends you follow these 7 search tips. 1. When you enter your search terms into the search box, be as specific as possible. The more terms you use, the more narrow your search will be, and the fewer results you will retrieve. Focusing on significant keywords is a good first approach. 2, do not use any punctuation such as quotation marks, at least for your first pass at the search. And this is especially true when you are searching using a mesh term or an entry term. If you put quotes around an untagged mesh term or an entry term, you will turn off automatic term mapping and your term will not be searched as a mesh term and the entry term will not map to mesh. I will show you an example in a little bit. 3, you do not need to use any Boolean operators such as AND. PubMed will add those automatically. 4, there is no need to capitalize. PubMed is case insensitive. 5, PubMed can recognize and find phrases for you. I will show you where to determine if your phrase is indexed a little later. 6, the National Library of Medicine suggests that you start your search without using search tags, such as TIAB in brackets, that stands for title and abstract, or author in brackets, because, spoiler alert, the tags will turn off ATM. 7, and lastly, PubMed is smart, or at least the people who program it are. PubMed can distinguish between subject words, journal titles, and author names based on years' worth of data. We will go into great detail today as to how PubMed does that. With those tips in mind, we will walk through a basic search to get acquainted with ATM. This slide shows a screenshot of the search box in PubMed. It lets you do what some might call a keyword search, but in a sophisticated way because of how the search box is programmed. There's more than meets the eye. On this slide, it shows a search for indigestion, abdominal pain in the search box. So here it says indigestion, abdominal pain. There are no quotes or tags and no Boolean operators in between the terms. To see how PubMed interpreted this search, we would click on the link that says Advanced, right here where it says Advanced. And that's directly under the search box. And then we would scroll down to the History and Search Details section and click on the right-facing arrow in the Details column to expand and show the search details. Now we are looking at the complete view of the search details. I entered a total of 3 words: indigestion, abdominal, pain. But you can see in the search details, PubMed did more than look just for those 3 words. You can review the search details either in the top area here or in the translation section here. They provide the same information, just in a slightly different format. The translation section shows how PubMed interpreted each of your search terms on their own line. So if you entered multiple words into the search box, it can be easier to review the details here. We see that indigestion mapped to the mesh term dyspepsia, and that will bring in the Medline citations. Those are citations with mesh terms. So here I have indigestion, and it mapped to dyspepsia, which is a mesh term. PubMed also searched for dyspepsia in all fields, which will bring in non-Medline citations that include the term dyspepsia in the title and abstract fields. So, or dyspepsia in all fields. Next, we see that PubMed does not ignore the terms that you used. We see that indigestion, which is an entry term for the mesh term dyspepsia, was searched in all fields, even though it already mapped to the mesh term. So here, or indigestion in all fields. So all of those were OR'd together to expand your search. Then we see abdominal pain mapped as a mesh term. So here, it's a mesh term here. And abdominal pain was broken into pieces, anded together, and searched in all fields. That part of the search will look for those exact words in the title, abstract, and keywords. But the words may not be right next to each other. The search should pick up abdominal pain as a phrase, and we see that phrase, abdominal pain, is searched in all fields right here, just like indigestion was searched in all fields. We got all of that from 3 words. That is ATM in action. Rebecca, are there any questions so far?
Nothing yet, but
Okay.
as usual, they might be typing, so
Yeah,
I'll be gathering, hunting and gathering. So
right. We will stop occasionally. I'll be checking with Rebecca, so go ahead and put your comments and questions in. Okay. Now we will start digging into what's going on behind the scenes when ATM kicks in. When you use the search box to search for a term without quotes or tags, PubMed tries to match your terms against 3 translation tables that have been developed from the data in PubMed. When I say data, I mean things like subject words, such as indigestion and abdominal pain, journal titles, and author names. The National Library of Medicine refers to these as tables, but you might envision them as an index in the back of a book. The tables are lists of words, journal details, and author names that are indexed in PubMed. The 3 tables are subjects, journals, and author names, and that is the order that automatic term mapping goes in, and that is number 1 on your handout. Notice the conveyor belt we have at the bottom of this slide. It represents the ATM process. When you put your search term into the search box, think of them as being on a conveyor belt that stops at each table in the order we see on the slide. But it goes really fast, computer fast. ATM first tries to map your terms to the subject table. If the term maps to mesh, the term gets off the conveyor belt and processing on that term is complete. So on the slide we looked at earlier, indigestion and abdominal pain both mapped to mesh, so they got off the conveyor belt. All the remaining terms on the conveyor belt proceed to the second stop, the journal table. The journal table is a list of all PubMed journal titles, not just Medline journals. If a match is found for a journal title, it gets off the conveyor belt and processing on that term is complete. Then whatever terms are left on the conveyor belt will continue to the author table. If a match is found on the author table, the author name will get off the conveyor belt. If no match is found, any remaining terms will be searched in all fields, which includes article titles, abstracts, and more. We have a link on the handout that gives the complete definition of all fields. PubMed looks in all fields to ensure that it doesn't miss relevant results. And remember, PubMed does not search the full text of a citation. Okay, now let's take a closer look at the subject table, which is the first stop on the conveyor belt. Here is the first stop, the subject translation table. This table actually contains more than mesh terms. The subject table includes everything we see on this slide, and that is number 2 on your handout. I will let this display for a bit so you can write these down if you would like to. PubMed will look in these 9 places to try to find a match for your terms during the first stop. If you attended the mesh class last week, I covered most of these types of terms except for UMLS. UMLS stands for Unified Medical Language System. UMLS is a huge vocabulary made up of several vocabularies from varying disciplines. For example, the health insurance agency has a vocabulary, and the laboratory industry, such as the labs where we get our blood drawn, well, they have a vocabulary. These vocabularies are all part of UMLS. UMLS is working behind the scenes in ATM. So why am I telling you this? Well, sometimes your terms will map to mesh, but it may not be obvious why they mapped. I have an exercise I want you to try. If you can, go directly to mesh, and Rebecca has dropped the link in the chat to take you there. And let me open up my tab with mesh. Once you're in mesh, type in shin bone. And if you go ahead and hit search, it will map to tibia. And I'd like you to scroll down to the entry terms and let me know, is shin bone listed? Let me know in the chat. Right, it is not listed. Let me go there to demonstrate. So here we have shin bone, which was our entry term or what we entered into the search box, and it mapped directly to tibia. And as we scroll down to the entry terms, as defined by the National Library of Medicine, we just see tibias. We do not see shin bone. This is an example of mapping pulled in from the UMLS vocabulary. UMLS is too large to include on each mesh record, but the bottom line is if your term maps to mesh correctly, we don't really need to know how the mapping occurred. Okay, Rebecca, any questions that I can address now?
So I will go back and pull up the questions, but you have addressed them. So
Okay.
there was one that said, does ATM always map to all fields, or is there a way to change that to title abstract, for example? Would you like me to say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so ATM does very specific things. So, after you run a search, you can check your search details. We used to have a trainer who said search details is your best friend in PubMed anyway, um, but there's no change. I mean, it's a whole algorithm, so we cannot change it. But once you have run your search and you want to make a change, you can grab your search details and change it any way you want. But included in all fields are title, abstract, keywords, author names. I mean, it's almost every field except things like public. Well, I thought publication date. Oh, publication type is not included. There's just very few things that are not included. I do have the link to all fields definition on your handout, so you can look there. So I think that probably answers that. And then Laura asked, does PubMed prioritize subject first, then journals, then authors? And yes, that is the order of operations with ATM, subjects, journals, and authors. And that's something you really do need to know. And Marga's going to get to some more searches that will demonstrate why you need to know that. So,
Yeah.
and those are the only two questions.
Okay. All right. I am going to switch to going into PubMed for some exercises. So let's start by looking at the subject table. Let's search for the term backache as one word. And I've used no quotes or tags. Then I will click on Advanced under the search box. And I will scroll down this page to the History and Search Details. And in the Details column, there's a right-facing arrow or chevron. I will click on that, and that opens up my search details. And here I have one version, and then the translations are basically the same information. Notice that ATM did more than just look for the one word that we put in the search box. So ATM is designed to bring in relevant results. The first thing we see is that backache mapped to back pain, the mesh term, and that will bring in the Medline citations. So we have backache is what we put in the search box. It mapped to back pain, which is a mesh term. Next, we see for all terms that are two or more words, terms like back pain and abdominal pain, ATM will break the term into pieces and search for each piece ANDed together in all fields. So here we have back in all fields and pain in all fields. Then that gets ORed with back pain in all fields, kept together as a phrase. And that is ORed with backache, which is the term we initially used, searched in all fields. And lastly, we see an example of enhanced ATM mapping. This includes plurals, such as backaches. Okay, now I have a question for you. What does not appear in the search details box, but was included in our search? If you attended the mesh session last week, I covered this. Let me know in the chat. What are we not seeing in the search details that would be included in your search? Okay, what I am looking for is the more narrow terms that fall below the mesh term back pain. Let me go into mesh and look up back pain to see if there are more narrow terms. So I will go back to my mesh page here and I will look up back pain. And I will select this first result. And now I'm at the mesh record for back pain. And I will scroll down until I get to my mesh tree here. And I have back pain. And then there are two more narrow terms here. Failed back surgery syndrome and low back pain will also be searched. But by design, these were included in the search, but not displayed in the search details. This means we can expect that some of the citations in our set of results will include articles that have been indexed with these two more narrow mesh terms. This is done so you will not miss possible relevant results. This is a feature called automatic explosion. So to recap, we just searched for a single term backache that mapped to the mesh term back pain in the subject translation table. And remember, once a term maps to the translation table, processing on that term stops, and PubMed will not look for it in other translation tables. And we will see why that is very important to know in just a moment. All right, so the terms that did not map to the subject table will continue on to the second stop. Who can tell me what the second stop would be on the conveyor belt? Right, journals. And that is number 3 on the handout. And Rebecca, is there anything I can answer before we move forward?
So there was a question that I did answer, but just in case
Okay.
other people are not reading the chat, the question was, what do you mean when you say we'll bring in Medline citations? And that was when we looked at if you go back one slide
Mm-hmm.
or two slides. No, where's the back pain slide? I'm sorry. Did we go?
Uh, oh, I guess, did we
Before
just,
this? Oh, it was just in this one. I'm sorry, there
yeah,
wasn't a back pain slide.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so back pain tagged as mesh. Will bring in Medline citations, and Medline citations are the only ones that have mesh terms applied to them. Medline journals, Medline citations have mesh terms assigned to them. Let's see, one just came in. With the mapping process, is it still relevant to start our searches using the mesh option? And the answer is no. In general. So with ATM, it's designed so you don't have to know mesh terms. If you start with the mesh process, I'm sorry, with a tagged term, like let's just say back pain tagged as mesh, you're kind of limiting your search. But I mean, at some point you may want to do that. After you run this big back pain search or backache search, you say, okay, well, I got too many, sort of false hits, words with back over here and pain unrelated somewhere else in the abstract. So ATM is definitely good for at least a first pass with your search, and it may get you exactly what you want, but you may want to just sort of narrow things a little bit at some point and just try the mesh term. So I hope that made sense. That's all.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and the vast majority of journals are Medline journals. There's like 50 to 100 mesh journals in
Yeah,
PubMed or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, you're
All
not
right.
good. And those are, well, I was going to say, those are the good journals, but not to judge.
Not to
But
judge.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So PubMed search box and ATM are programmed to recognize journal titles in 3 different ways. The full journal title, the Medline title abbreviations, and the ISSNs using the dashes. And that is number 3 on your handout. So if you enter just a piece of a journal title, an unofficial piece, PubMed will not be able to map it to the journal table. Let's give this a try. So I will go back to PubMed, just click on where it says PubMed here, brings me back to the PubMed homepage. If you are able, go to PubMed and let's find all citations from the New England Journal of Medicine. So I will Journal of Medicine and I will hit search. So you may know that the official title is the New England Journal of Medicine. And you can search for journal titles with or without that initial article, in this case, the, and PubMed will map to the appropriate journal. So here I am getting over 88,000 results. But notice the titles in the summary view of the results. So here, and this is the Medline abbreviation, NENGL, JMED is the abbreviation for the New England Journal of Medicine. And so we are seeing that in the results, but we are also seeing bolded the New England Journal of Medicine in the title of this citation. And if we go further down, there may be others. Let's make our way to the search details to find out what PubMed's automatic term mapping did. So I clicked on advanced under the search box and I'm scrolling down to my search details here. Open this up. The search details shows us that the full title mapped correctly to the journal table. So here we see that my search term here mapped to the journal table, which is, and we're seeing the tag in the brackets here that says journal. But notice what else ATM did. ATM also searched for the title in all fields. And it broke down all the pieces, New and England and journal, blah, blah, blah. So if your goal is to find all the citations just from a specific journal, then you probably don't need all of this extra stuff that came in your search. You could copy this piece here, and I am going to go back to my search results by clicking on this hyperlinked results. This is the number of our results to bring me back to my search. And I will clear this and paste in this tagged result. And now I have results. It's knocked off about 1,000 results. And these are results from the journal rather than results that include the journal title in the article title. Now, here's a fun thing we can do. Clear your search box here. The New England Journal of Medicine is known by people around the world, and it would be understandable if you think that putting a partial title into the search box would get you the desired result. So let's give that a try. I will put in New England Journal. Oops. And hit search. So once again, we see the abbreviation here in the citation. We are getting it bolded in the title of the article. We're also seeing that these are not all from the New England Journal of Medicine. Certainly this one isn't, and the following one isn't, and the one after that or after that. So let's take a look at our search details to find out what happened. I will click on Advanced underneath the search box, scroll down to my search details and open this up. And I will look in this translation section. So New England mapped to the mesh term for the geographic region of New England. And the word journal mapped to periodicals as topic, periodicals as topic, which is a mesh term. So these terms got off the conveyor belt at the subject table and never made it to the journal table. So that is where the search went awry. And it drives home the point that you need to use the full title or the Medline title or the abbreviation or the ISSN, because that is what ATM, the journal table, and PubMed are programmed to recognize. That said, for some journals, additional versions of the title are included in the journal table. You can find additional title versions listed in the NLM catalog in the other titles section of a record. For example, you will find NEJM as a version for the New England Journal of Medicine. So as we can see, ATM is not foolproof, and a problem can arise when a journal title is also a mesh term. What are some examples of journal titles that you've run into that are also a mesh term? Let me know in the chat. Blood, yes. Any other journal title names that you would imagine are also, yes, heart, cell, circulation, exactly. Nature, yes, yes. Those are great examples. All right. In fact, we are going to use cell as our example. So let me go back to the home page in PubMed. So go ahead and type the word cell into the search box with no quotes and no tags. If we take an initial look at the results, we don't see the title cell in the summary view. So here, this says stem cell, etc. Here's these citations are not from the journal Cell. Let's take a look in our search details. Okay, here are the search details. Tell me what ATM did in the chat and why. Let me pull up the chat for you. According to our search details, yes. Cell got off at the subject table. Right, mapped to the subject, so it didn't get to the journal section. Got off the conveyor belt at subject. Perfect. That's exactly right. Because the first stop in ATM is the subject table, and since cell is a mesh term, it mapped to the subject table. And after a term maps to the subject table, it gets off the conveyor belt and it'll never make it to the journal table. So how can we adjust our search to find citations from this journal? Or in other words, how could we turn off ATM for this search and force PubMed to look for our term as a journal title? Can you give me some ideas in the chat? Yes, we can use the journal field. And there's a couple of ways that we can do this. We can either tag the journal title with journal in brackets, or if you have, let me go back to my results page here. if you happen to know the ISSN number, and I have it right here, 0092 dash, and the dash is important, 8674. We can search that way. And now we are getting citations from the journal cell. Either that or using the advanced search builder, which we haven't used yet. So if I go to the advanced page, we've been scrolling right past this up until this point. So we can put a search for journal here, and then put our search term cell here. Then we click add, and it adds to a query box right here. And then we can hit search. And now, once again, our results are for cell, the journal. Okay, so using the field selector is basically the same as using a tag, and it's just creating the tag for you. Any questions about journal searching before I move on to the author names?
Let me see here. There was a lot of responses to your questions. No, there was one question about putting, just quotes around the word cell. But if you do that, you can take a look at, and that's why search details should be your go-to next step, because it will, in most cases, answer your questions about what happened to your search. So putting quotes around the term cell, actually just, even though it's a mesh term and a journal title, it was only searched, it was searched in all fields, which was too much, which I think that's what I think that first search you did, it got like 8.5 million
Yes.
results, which
Yes,
is
it did.
absurd. So yeah, so nothing else.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my slides. Let me start this section by asking the group a question. How many of you have tried to find all citations by a particular author in PubMed? Let me know in the chat. Yes, I'm getting people have. I remember one of my very first jobs in the hospital library world, that I was tasked with finding citations from a doctor that worked at the hospital, all of his citations. And so searching for an author name is the #1 type of search people do in PubMed. So understanding how PubMed and ATM are programmed to recognize a name will help you run a more successful author search. That said, searching for an author may still be imperfect. We will cover this in this next section. We will cover numbers 4, 5, and 6 on the handout. The author table contains all author names going back to at least 1946, and that is number 4 on your handout. If you wrote an article that's indexed in PubMed, your name is included in the author table. It doesn't have to be a Medline journal to be included. NLM suggests searching with the last name and the first initial to run the most comprehensive search, and that is number 5 on your handout. However, you can use up to 2 initials because the author table is formatted to accept up to 2 initials. But there are 2 initials only when the information has been provided by the publishers. And it's important to remember that all citation information comes from the publishers. You can run a search with the author's full name in natural or inverted order, last name first, but this will run a less comprehensive search, and I will talk more about inverted name order in a moment. First, who can tell me why searching with a full name is less comprehensive? And hint, the answer is on the slide. Yes, exactly. Full names began in 2002. PubMed began accepting full names from publishers in 2002, and that is number 6 on your handout. And remember, all PubMed citation data comes from the publisher, and only some journal publishers submit the full name, making this a much less effective search strategy. Let's go back to PubMed and run an author search 7 different ways to see the impact that each name format has on our results. I will start with a fresh PubMed for my author searching. Search number 1. Let's start with a full hyphenated name search. We get a lot of questions about how PubMed handles a hyphenated name. And the main thing to know about hyphens is that PubMed ignores them. So you can use the hyphen or not use it. Rebecca will put an author name into the chat box to use for this example. Let's use the name Juan Gomez Reno to do a full name search in natural order in the search box. Again, no quotes or tags, and I will hit search, and I have 234 results. Now, if we look at the results by year over on the side here, we see that there are works going back to 2003. We also have an information notice right here in a blue box above our results that says, it looks like you are looking for an author. So see how smart PubMed is. It knew we were looking for an author. So if you want to change the sort order, you can, but I just want to point out to you here that it is sorted by best match. When you change the sort orders, the number of results stay the same. It just reshuffles them. But I just want to leave it at best match for now. But let's go to our search details. I will click on Advanced and scroll down the page here, click on My Details. So if we look at the translations section here, this is what it looks like when a name maps to the author index. You see the full author name tag after the first 2 entries, right here and right here, and then the full investigator name tag after the 3rd entry. Investigators are people who help with the research, but not the writing of the article. There's actually an investigator table as well. ATM will look at the author table and the investigator table when it senses that you are searching for a name. You don't have to do anything special. The format for searching an investigator name is the same as searching an author name. Notice the variation in comma placements for this name. This comes from the publishers. So here the comma comes after Reno, and here it comes after Gomez Reno. Remember, all citation information comes from the publishers. They upload directly to PubMed, and NLM does not run checks. So that's important to know. If you ever come across something that you think is an error in the citation, you can report it through NLM help, but NLM themselves, they don't run quality control on any data that the publishers upload. Now, what might we be missing in this search because we used the full name? Can you tell me in the chat? What could we be missing? Exactly. Any works before 2002. because that's when NLM began accepting full names, and NLM does not go back and add the full names to the citation records. NLM suggests that we use the last name and only the first initial to run the most comprehensive search. So for search number 2, let's take NLM's advice and search with the last name and the first initial to see what we get. And so I will go back to my results page here, 234, and I will do an inverted search here. I will remove his first name here and then J the end and run my search. So this time we get 353 results, which is quite a bit more than we got with his full name. And if we look at the results by year, we see that there's work going back to 1979. And we would have missed all these earlier works by searching with his full name. The question is, do all 353 citations belong to R. Juan Gomez Reino? Well, PubMed tries to help us figure out with a feature called Computed Author Sort, and that is search number 3. To use the Computed Author Sort feature, pull up any citation in the abstract view that you believe is your author. And how are we going to know it's our author? Well, we have to do a little research. What does this individual write about? What is their research area? What type of doctor are they? What institutions are they affiliated with? So our Dr. Gomez Reino is a rheumatologist located in Spain. So let's click on this second citation here. This is a review article in the Annals of Rheumatic Diseases. And because it's a review article, there are many, many authors on it. We see our author is listed, and we also see 22, which will tell us where this doctor is affiliated. I will click on expand to get the list of affiliations. If I go down to 22, I see Spain. So that checks a lot of our boxes. Now, if we go up to the list of authors again and click on the hyperlinked name, PubMed will search for the articles with the same author name, and the algorithm will bring articles to the top of the list that it has determined are likely to be by the same author, even if they don't publish under the exact same name or at the exact same institution. And this is referred to as the author name disambiguation process. And we see another blue information box here that says the results are displayed in computed author sort. And we see this has been changed by sort by computed author. During this process, the similarity for each citation is measured by examining the metadata for the citation, such as co-authors, journal, title, affiliation, abstract, mesh terms, grants, publication dates. Looking at these results, we can see a couple of name variations here. Some have a JJ. This has a single J. There's a JJ here. PubMed pulls up these name variations because the author names are automatically truncated to account for the varying initials. If you want to turn off the truncation feature and search only for this name with one J, you could do a tagged author search and put double quotes around the form of the author name that you want. So you would specify the author with just one J and not two Js. Also, the titles of the first few citations include rheumatoid in the title, so that gives us another clue that this is likely to be our author. If your author uses a designation such as junior or senior, you would place that after their name. So this is author search number 4. I will clear my search box here, and I will put in the example of Gates W. Jr. And I get 2 results. Now, sometimes we have to tell PubMed which is the first name and which is the last name. For example, the name Ryan James. Is it Ryan James or is it James Ryan? And in this case, we can use a comma. So let's do search number 5 for James Ryan by entering the last name Ryan, followed by a comma, and then James, and hit search. And when we look at the search details, we see that ATM kicked in. Even though we use the comma, it's been programmed to recognize this situation. So it looked for my author name here with the last name Ryan. Now for search number 6, I want to talk about using ORCID IDs to search for an author. You may be familiar with ORCID. The acronym stands for Open Researcher and Contributor Identifier. One of the things that computed author sort looks at is the ORCID. So ORCID provides a persistent digital identifier that you own and control and distinguishes you from every other researcher. ORCID.org is a nonprofit organization that allows anyone who participates in research to be uniquely identified using a free ORCID. PubMed began accepting ORCIDs in 2013, but they did not go back and add it to citations. And just like any other PubMed data, ORCIDs are supplied by the publisher if the author has supplied it to the publisher. Is there anyone here who has an ORCID? You could let me know in the chat. Oh, we've got a few people who have ORCIDs. Great. So if PubMed receives an ORCID, it will be included in the citation. If it is not submitted by the publisher, PubMed does not go looking for it. This means that PubMed will not aggregate all of an author's citations based on ORCID. So let me repeat that. PubMed will not aggregate all of an author's citations based on ORCID. Let me show you 2 ways that you can search with an ORCID. We could start with the search box here and using the dashes, and I have an example here, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 8, 4, 6, 8, 4, 3, 9, 8. So here I have a citation that is associated with a former colleague of mine, Erica Lake. Some of you may have taken classes with Erica. So using the dashes is important. We can also use advanced search. So let's go to advanced here. And we can do an author identifier. And once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 4. I should have copied it. I add to the search to the query box and run the search that way. So the takeaway message about searching for authors is use the last name and then a space and the first initial for the most comprehensive search. When you do that, the name will map to the author table and the investigator index when appropriate, which will cover all the years of publication going back to at least 1946. But there is one last search. Now, if you are searching for a very common name and it turns out the Rebecca's name, Rebecca Brown, is fairly common, then you can add additional information to narrow down your search. Let me clear the search box and put Brown, Brown, or if I just went that way, we get 15,000 results. But since we know Rebecca works for NNLM, when I use that in the search as well, now I get a citation that is associated with our Rebecca. Okay, so before I move on, Rebecca, how's the chat box doing?
Okay. Well, there was a question about the difference between full author name and author. If you could jump into search details, go back to your advanced search,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see, let's pick the maybe the first one that you did for Juan Gomez Reino, the full author name. So here in the top part, it shows Reino, comma, Juan Gomez tagged as an author. And then the translation section, it shows
Mm,
tagged as a full author name. So really, the translation section shows you where PubMed found the answer. So in this case, it found this name in the full author table versus the top section of the search, the details, that's what it searched for. So Reino, comma, Juan Gomez tagged as an author, that's what it looked for. And then it found his name in the full author name table. So they're same, only different, those two pieces. So that was, hopefully that
yep.
answers that. There was a question if an author published in a journal under the name, well, I'll sort of abbreviate, change this. If it was like
Mm-hmm.
last name and two initials. And if that's what the publisher submits to PubMed, then, depending on that person's name, I mean, you can use one or two initials to search for that person's name, and you may have to narrow things down, but it would find it if the information from publishers just came in as initials. So I think that's what they were asking, and if I'm misinterpreting your question, let me know in chat. But that's, I believe, all the questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's okay, great. That's great. All right, let's go back here. So sometimes ATM does its job, but it doesn't map or translate your terms the way you intended. We saw that happen when we searched for sell the journal. And this is something that can also happen when you search for a phrase. Let's try an example. Let's search for the phrase pressure point. I've searched for pressure point singular. And again, no tags or quotes. Let me look at the search details. So here's my search. Open up the details here. The details show us that ATM did a lot, but the one thing it did not do was keep the phrase together, and that is what I wanted. So in cases like this, when you've verified in the search details that ATM did not map your phrase correctly, and we see in the translations section, it searched for pressure and point, but it did not keep those two things together, then NLM suggests trying double quotation marks around your phrase. So let's search for pressure point with double quotes and take a look at the search details. So here I've got over 72,000 results. So here I will put quotes around my search phrase and do it again. And now I've got 235. I will look at advanced and see what happened here. So here's my same search term, only with quotes. Okay. So we see that ATM was turned off. We're not finding any mesh terms. And PubMed did look for the phrase kept together, pressure point, in all fields. And I've got 235 results. So this worked well. PubMed kept our phrase together in this circumstance. However, using quotes does not guarantee that PubMed will find the phrase as you entered it. Let me go back to my search box here and enter the term or the phrase dog wheelchair. And this came up because a colleague was looking for articles in or citations in PubMed when her dog developed mobility issues. So I'm going to start with no quotes, no tags, and hit search. Now, a quick scan of our results show that the two words were not kept close together, and the topics are not about dogs who need wheelchairs. Let's look at our search details. We could see that ATM did its thing, but that's not exactly what we wanted. Again, it didn't search as a phrase. So let's go back and do what we did before by putting quotes around it and running the search again. And now we have an information box that says quoted phrase not found in the phrase index. So let me know if you've seen this message before. If you've tried a phrase and you got a message that said quoted phrase is not found in the phrase index. Okay, so let's take a look and again at our search details to find out what happened. And we have an exclamation point here. Quoted phrase not found in the phrase index. This did not work the same way as pressure point did because dog wheelchair is not an indexed phrase in PubMed. So what do I mean by that? Well, PubMed handles phrases differently than other databases. PubMed maintains a phrase index or a list of phrases that appear frequently in biomedical literature, and that is number 7 on your handout. Let's make our way to the Advanced Search Builder, and I will show you where to verify whether a phrase is indexed or not. So I will come up to the top of this page, and I will use the dog wheelchair example. Whoops. But I will not add it to the query box. Instead, underneath the Add button, it says Show Index. And when I click on that, if dog wheelchair was an indexed phrase, it would be on this list. And there is nothing here. But we already know that. PubMed already told us that. Now let's look for a pressure point. And again, show index. And there it is with 236 results. And that was something we already knew as well. So if the phrase you are looking for is not included in this list, then PubMed cannot return results for your phrase, and you will need to find other terms to describe what it is you're looking for. Okay, Rebecca, are there any questions about author searching or phrase searching that I can address?
So let's see. There was a question Um, it goes back to, and it was L. Peters, I think is that initial, it goes back to the computed author sort
Mm-hmm.
piece. So if you go back to the search for my name, yeah, Brown R. Oh,
Okay.
actually, Brown, well, either one probably, Brown R, NNLM, maybe that
Okay.
one.
Oh, where it didn't take me where I wanted to go. Oh, there. I was not patient enough.
Well,
Okay.
well, and add NNLM to
Oh,
this. I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
And run that. And then I believe this is what they were asking. And it talked about the hyperlinked names. So yes, this is me. I am that Rebecca Brown. But if you click on my name, and that's where the question was about, if you click on my name, it's going to find 15,000 results. And I want to tell you, those are not mine. Well, 15,024 of those are not mine citations. Why did it bring in all these other things? Well, I guess it's just like overdoing it. And it just shows you have to, just because you've clicked on something, it looks right. We've taught you about computed author sort. It's going to find citations by your author. You're still going to have to do work because author searching is imperfect. And like Margot said earlier, you have to figure out, okay, what type of research does this person do? Where are they located? Blah, blah, blah. So I hope I answered your question. Um, so yeah, and I think those, let me see. Oh, and then there was a question about in pressure point, if you go to search details again,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that without the quotes, if you would click on the 72,000 results. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go back and expand the result, the search
Okay.
details for that one. I'm sorry. The
The first
Oh
one
yeah, there
here.
we go, which is now on top. The question was, why wasn't pointer included in this search? Because there are other,
Mm,
there's pointed,
pointing.
pointing,
Yeah.
points. I think pointer is quite different than point or pointing. So I can only really guess how they've decided which terms, you know, will also be brought in.
Yeah.
But I think it's because pointer is not the same as pointing. So,
Yeah. And
or
it seems to rely heavily on the biomedical literature, what phrases and
yeah,
terms.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now hold on. So while we were talking more things, oh, laser pointer, yes. Well, it's still,
Mm,
yeah, I don't think so. So, okay, and then L. Peters said thank you, and yes, I understood the question. So, okay, that's all.
okay. All right. I will go back to my slides here. All right. We're just about done. So let's talk about how to turn off ATM when necessary. And we've covered some of this already. So you can use quotes, and quotes will sometimes work to keep a phrase together, and that worked with pressure point, and that is number 8 on your handout. But remember, if you put quotes around a mesh term or an entry term, it will turn off ATM. So sometimes you just, when you're searching, you're playing around with different ways of looking for the information. And as Rebecca has said, really the search details is your best friend. Okay. And 2, you can also use tags like we did with our cell journal search. So, or you can use that tag in the, either you could type it in or you could use the advanced search builder, which is the next tip. You can also use the single citation matcher, which is on the home page of PubMed to search for a single citation. It's basically the same as using an advanced search builder because you're searching by specific fields. And then lastly, you can use proximity searching. Now, we don't cover proximity searching in this class, but we do have links on the handout about it, and the links will take you to articles that describe how to use that feature. Now, if you're interested in continuing to learn the ins and outs of searching PubMed, there is an on-demand class that covers how to adjust your searches based on the changes in the vocabulary that occur over time. And Kate Majewski of NLM teaches a class live every January when the new MESH vocabulary is released. And I've included the links to registration for the on-demand version on the handout. And you can also be notified of any new classes when they're added to the training calendar by subscribing to our weekly new class email. And the instructions are also on the handout. Lastly, Rebecca has the evaluation link for today's session. We'd love for you to complete the evaluation, even if you're not claiming the MLA CE. If you are claiming CE, completing the evaluation is your first step. After you complete it, the CE code that you use on the Medical Library Association's website will appear. So it will appear in that parentheses there. So are there any final questions or anything I can help with?
Callie had to step away to help somebody. Go figure, at a library, helping somebody.
Yes.
She said, but did you talk about why you want to bypass ATM? And yes, we did, Callie, and you missed it. No, sorry. Yeah, when your search isn't working, and we've seen, well, like the New England Journal of Medicine search or the New England Journal search and the search for cell, those searches didn't work, so we had to turn it off. But she then says, more specifically, instances where Boolean searches might be more useful than ATM. So ATM builds a Boolean search. So it's not that you're just, I don't think it's one or the other. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I really like, more than a first pass often, put your terms in there and see what happens, and then, change it if you need to with your Booleans, with your tags, but.
Yeah, and searching really is like trying multiple things, and like I was saying, checking the search. Okay, well, what happened here? I mean, that's the great thing about PubMed is you can take a look and see what happened, and make some adjustments based on that.
Yeah, it just takes our time. So, I thought there was another one. Thank you. She says, I asked because I teach students how to use this tool. Yeah, and especially if they're not library students, they don't, I bet they don't, I mean, they want good results, but I'm not sure they want to learn how to build a Boolean search, a systematic review type search, but you may be teaching people that. So, I mean, I think a good place even to start is showing them the search details, and it's like, okay, could be the beginning of even bigger search if you're doing a systematic review or something like that.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.